Only 25% of people who sell their company don't regret it. And there comes a point where you step off of that treadmill and you realize that enough is what you're actually seeking and searching. And then that allows you to achieve freedom. The most important thing that you can do proactively. Most people exit from their business. They get fed up, they get tired, they get old, and they're like, oh, I want to get out of here. Instead of, oh, this is this new thing. This is actually my legacy. And I'm liquidating so that I can allocate it against this problem in order to create the impact that I was placed on this planet to do. What I would say I care most about is freedom. If I get to choose how I'm gonna do that instead of it already being chosen for me, I'm winning there. Most people think your life matters because of how much money you made. It has very little to do with that because money is just a tool. What you do with the money that you make is...
All right. What's up, amazing marketing show listeners? Today, we have a great episode, or tonight, if you're listening at night for that matter. We have a great episode if you're looking or even thinking about exiting your business. I bet you've thought about it late at night when you're just wondering, when am I going to get all these millions of dollars? Well, the truth is you probably can if your business is set up right. And so our guest is going to walk us through all of that. But before I introduce our guest, I want to introduce my co-host, Chris Gray. Chris, what's going on?
Dmitri, what up?
I'm living the dream and excited to introduce Jerome Myers, business exit extraordinaire. Jerome, tell us about who you are and what you do.
Dmitri, Chris, so good to be with you guys. Thank you so much for having me on the show. A few years back, I was in the back of a business conference. A guy was giving his 7-step plan to a double unicorn exit and didn't really pay attention because it was like $2 billion and the exit doesn't seem practical for most people. And it wasn't something that I was chasing anymore. And so he got deep into the presentation and he said, yeah, I was having an existential crisis. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but it sounds really interesting. And he said that right after he said, I told my wife I was going to In-N-Out Burger and she told me to pick up a job application while I was there. I was like, what's going on? And so this guy had just exited Kajabi. Arguably, he had a few $100 million and he didn't have the resources to help him figure out what he was going to do after that big exit. And so if somebody with unlimited resources didn't have the opportunity or the support that he needed in order to step into that next phase of his life, then what does the common person do? And I would say common, I'm saying if you have a 6-figure exit, 7-figure exit, or when you start getting into the 8 and the 9 figures where you're work optional, you're probably young still, and you're questioning what else are you going to do because you had this really high peak. And when I left that conference, I started doing research. And what I found was one article from Harvard Business Review, and it said, congratulations, you sold your business, now prepare to be depressed. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, only 1 in 10 businesses make it 10 years. Only 2 businesses that get listed for sale actually transact. And only 25% of people who sell their company don't regret it. I was like, well, what's the point of being an entrepreneur if that's the destination that you're working towards? And I decided that was the problem I wanted to eradicate from the face of the planet. And so we've published more on this topic than anybody else in the country. We've got podcasts, books, white papers, articles. We're on the faculty at some of the certification organizations that help with exit planning and succession strategies. And we've talked all across the world, from Sri Lanka to New York to Florida, doing in-person workshops and virtual things, depending on what the audience needs. And the whole goal, and it's the goal of the podcast today, is just to make people aware of what the potential outcome would be if they don't prepare for their exit. Because if you're in business, having an exit plan is really good business for you, whether you're ready to retire today, 5 months from now, 5 years from now, or 20 years from now. Having a plan in place so that your business is ready for you to transition out of it and to make yourself irrelevant to the business is the thing that's going to make your business more valuable than anything else.
So then, Jerome, say I'm around people who've exited anywhere from 6 to 8 figures. It's usually within that range. So for the person who's going to exit, and let's say it's around from the 6 to 8 figure mark, what does that person usually get wrong or don't understand about what's going to happen after they exit?
What most people don't understand is they're going to be lonely. So one of the things that without fail happens is 60% of the people that you talk to on a normal basis disappear when you exit the company. And so when we do workshops, we have people go through a tool we created called the 2C matrix, and where we look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Typically, it's their spouse, the kid, because we put them all in one level, and then the other 3 people are business related. When you exit your company, even though you're great friends and whatever else, especially if you're a guy, when you don't have that common interest anymore, your relationship fades. And eventually it's just like, oh, I can call them, but I'm not spending time with them on a regular basis anymore. And so they typically move into a space where they don't have people that are in proximity, because that's how most guys create their relationships. I'm friends with this person because we work out or we do jujitsu or we work together or insert the thing. And when you're not doing that thing anymore, the relationship dwindles away. And so I think the biggest thing, the thing that has the biggest impact on quality of life is the people that they spend time with. And if you don't intentionally change your 5 for people who are going to be there and available for you when you're post exit, you get in trouble pretty quickly.
I love that this is existential and we're talking about what somebody may have been working towards their entire lives or their entire careers. They realize wasn't even what they wanted in the first place. And that's a pretty cool conversation right off the bat. Well, okay. Most people don't realize that they're going to be lonely. Well, how come this is the norm then? Why is everyone working towards this goal and they don't realize the implications of it?
When you think about when you started your journey, and some people like me, you come up with the idea, and then the first thing I do is go search the supercar that I'm gonna get when I get to that point. And then if once I get the car, then it's like, okay, well, now what? And it's like, oh, well, I guess I should go do another one of these things. And the thought is more is better. And there comes a point where you step off of that treadmill and you realize that enough is what you're actually seeking and searching. And then that allows you to achieve freedom. That freedom then gets you the opportunity to allocate the resources. So I'm not allocating my time, my energy, or my talent and my treasure to the pursuit of more stuff. What I'm allocating to now is more impact, more effect, more change. And I think most people lose that in the process. They think a bigger house, a bigger car, more expensive watch is going to change it. Flying private, like those things have a marginal increase in the quality of life, but it only matters what you do those things with that actually creates enjoyment or fulfillment. And so the marketing of it all, though, is hey, your life's going to be better when you have the Ferrari. Your life's going to be better when you have the 10,000 square foot house with the view. Your life is going to be better when you fly private. Nothing really changes. It's just you in a different box. And so if you haven't achieved fulfillment, if you haven't achieved or established the impact, then it all feels really empty. And that, but so few people actually get there to experience it. And then once you do experience it, the thought that you would turn around and tell people that, hey, this isn't what you're actually pursuing is like blasphemy. There's only been a few people that I've actually heard have this conversation. Jim Carrey's had it. More recently, Will Smith has had it. And the guy that was talking about the 7 steps to a double unicorn exit, he actually said the same thing. And the conversation goes something like this. I hope everybody gets really rich. They buy everything that they want only to find out that they didn't actually want any of that stuff. They thought they wanted it, but you're not going to believe me because what you've been shown your entire life is that there's something wrong with you and you have to get this next thing in order to prove that you're worthy.
Jerome, you and I first spoke at an event. I asked a question, and then during the break, you walked over to me and you were giving me some advice, but that advice was tailored around self-worth and the way I view myself. So let me try to be
I'm
concise
honored
with this
that you
question.
remember that.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Because it's still something I've been years later. Let me give you an example. I have improved myself from a development perspective. I have grown more so in this last year than ever. Okay. What I'm learning is that I can't self develop my way into self acceptance. It's like the person who keeps getting surgery. They keep getting surgery. Like, why are they getting surgery? Well, it's because they have this self image. You can't, no surgeon can help your self image. And I see some of that in what you're talking about. And so for the founder who has this, I got to get more, I got to get more, I got to get more, or whatever it is, like how do you help them with this perception that they have, so they can progress past that?
Apex performers, you typically have 5 scars of success. And the one that you're hitting on is really tied to only experiencing or being shown love based on achievement or accomplishment. And so if your kid's an athlete and the only time you say great things to them is when they do something well on the playing field, or they are a scholar and you only talk nice to them when they bring home a A on a test or a great report card, they learn that you have to do something in order for other people to like or love them. And so that gets amplified as we go out, especially, and I keep saying, especially if you're guys, because I think we're in this space where masculinity is being challenged and what is it and what is it not. But the primal concept is men are providers. And so if you define yourself by provision, then it's like, well, how much stuff can I buy? Right. Because that's the measuring stick. And the great part about it is you can't max it out. Like, you can't ever win the game. You can't flip that scoreboard. So there's always something that you can chase. And so back to like the core question, the first thing they have to do is accept themselves as they are. And you can do that right away. Most of it starts with forgiveness because we're carrying stuff along that was given to us by other people in order for them to manipulate us into doing what they wanted us to do. So when you put that baggage aside and then you accept that, hey, I am really happy with me and what I've done to this point. I've done the best that I could with the things that I have. And then you can move from there and say, if I wanted to improve some things, these are the things that I would improve. Not I'll accept myself when I improve these things, but this is the next better version of me that I'm working towards, I'm pursuing. And that looks like, oh, well, I can't accept myself until I've got a 6-pack, or I can't accept myself until I bench press 315 pounds, or until insert whatever words you want to insert. No, right now, I've done the best that I can with what I have to this point. I forgive myself for all the things that I've done wrong. I commit to not doing those things anymore and just come to peace with that. That frees you to do everything else. And I don't think most people spend the time to reconcile that. And sometimes we just need permission to do such a thing. And I give them permission today because they came and listened to us talk.
I think as far and few in between of people who are thinking that deeply, especially driven people who have a certain goal in mind and in many cases to exit their business. But let's talk about those people who are on this path, who have been successful. They haven't started thinking about this more personally or from a legacy perspective or what they're going to do next. So what can they start doing now to start preparing themselves for that exit?
We created an exit readiness assessment that looks at the 7 critical areas of their business so that they can see how ready they are in each one of those areas. And it gives them a score, a free report. They can grab it off our website. And so what they can do is first become aware of where they're in a great place and where they're not. That awareness then creates an opportunity for them to create a strategy or a plan to shore the company up and their personal readiness up in a way that makes it so that they're actually exit ready. Like, the goal isn't to get the business to a certain place and then become exit ready. The goal is for the business to be exit ready every day, because there are 4 things that take people out of business and they don't expect them and you can't predict them. Disease, death, divorce, and burnout. You don't know when those things are going to happen and where they're going to come. And so you want to make sure that your business is in a place where it can transition if any of those things happen without dramatically dropping the value of it. Because if you've worked on the thing for 15 to 50 years, as most people have, that have a business that's exitable, you don't want to throw it away because you had something come up that you hadn't planned for.
So does that include on the personal side what they need to do to get themselves personally ready so they don't hit that shock factor and depression afterwards?
So this is such a great question. And the answer is yes, right? I believe that only in America do we define ourselves by what we do. We introduce ourselves in that way. Uh, you go everywhere else and they're talking about family, they're talking about their hobbies and their interests. And it takes a while to actually get to a place where they talk about what they do to make money. I know many people say, oh, yeah, I do XYZ for a living, but no, you do that to make money. And that differentiation is really important. And so, from a personal standpoint, decoupling your identity, this thing we call the founder's exit paradox that people really experience intently when they move out of their company, you've got to decouple your identity from the company's identity. They should be two separate things. And too often it's all one and the same. And I get it, man. People mortgage their houses, they put their kids and their family on the back burner. They risk everything in order to make the business work. And so they feel connected to it. But the issue is at some point, you guys are going to part ways. Every business owner exits. 100% of business owners exit. It's just a matter of, are they able to sell it? Do they give it away or does it close? And so when you know that it is going to go a separate way from you at some point, the thought of putting everything in you and it being a part of you is really challenging. I would almost call it irresponsible because you know what the outcome is. I was doing a talk in Sri Lanka and I asked the audience, I was like, hey guys, like, what would you call somebody who didn't prepare for their death? Like, they didn't get any insurance, they didn't put any documents in place. Insert all of the things that we're told are best practices before we pass away. And they said irresponsible. I said, okay, but everybody in here agreed with me that 100% of business owners are going to exit. And so having your identity wrapped up in the business is the most important thing that you can do proactively, unraveling that to have a great exit. It is absolutely the most important thing you can do, separate your identity from the business.
You just mentioned, separating your identity from the business and why it's important. Then my question to you, Jerome, is can you share a moment from your own journey where you had to face doubt and reframe your identity?
Oh, yeah. So, and it's funny because this applies whether you're a business owner or in corporate America. And so in 2015, I opened a new division of a company. I was employee 2. We had $0 in revenue on January 13th. Went from 2 people on the team to 175 by September of that year. End of the year, we did $20 million in revenue with 30% profit. I put everything in that thing, man. I wake up at 4, work until 4, play with the kids, put them down. 8 to 12, I would work some more. And there came a point where I got a phone call. It was on December 24th at 4:55. And the comment was, hey, we're going to lay half the people off. And I argued about it because I was like, no, we're not. Like, we need them. We're going to continue to grow. Like, no, we're going to lay half of them off. And I spent the next week after getting hung up on figuring out who was going to stay and who was going to go. And for me, I was like, I thought, like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doing my own thing. The reality was that the buck didn't stop with me. And so I said, I'm going to do this time because they're making me do it. Gave away all my agency. And we put Humpty Dumpty back together again, did another 20 million. But I was having a very similar conversation the next year. And so when I walked out of corporate America, I had no plan. I had no identity because my identity had been that. the people that used to call didn't call me anymore. They didn't want to talk to me anymore. I didn't have a contract for them. I didn't have a salary increase or insert whatever benefit they wanted from being able to have access to me. And so all of that created a space where I had to deal with the six centers of doubt. I had to deal with my self-image, right? And my identity outside of that role. I had to deal with the loss of relationships, the people that I thought were ride or die for me and would be there for me no matter what. I had to figure out what I was going to do with that 40 to 60, sometimes 80 hours a week that I got back because I wasn't doing that anymore. And then there was the health thing. Like I was eating terrible. I was on the road all the time. Like what did I actually sacrifice in order to build that fast and that aggressively? And then there was prosperity. So the salary went away, the company vehicle went away. What do you do with that? And, if you're fortunate enough to have an exit where you're work optional, you don't have the push of having to make money to do the next thing. And so that motivation piece is a bit of a challenge for people who have successful exits. And then the last piece, which is significance. Like, all right, so I did that. I figured out that the money wasn't actually the thing. What can I really do to make sure that my life matters? The funny thing is, I went into real estate doing private equity, and I didn't actually feel like I made a difference. It was grandiose. We made money again, lots of money, but the impact wasn't what I wanted it to be. It wasn't my people. It wasn't truly a problem that I wanted to eradicate from the face of the planet. And so it probably gave more than just what you were looking for in the question. But for me, it was leaving corporate and then having to reintroduce myself to the world and create a completely new network in order to fulfill against the challenges that I wanted to solve for different people in this space.
So now you're working on this business, and presumably this business is one that you will be exiting at some point. And I'm curious, how, do you have that planned out already for yourself?
Yeah. So initially, the fastest way to monetize is personal brand. And so it was about me, it was about my journey, it was about all the things that I did. And now it's about frameworks. It's about the thought leadership. It's not about Jerome. It's about the frameworks that we created and tested with all the clients and that we've worked with over the years. Um, the business can operate. And then in addition to that is teaching other people what we've done so that they can be practitioners, even though we probably don't financially benefit from ex- expanding or sharing the knowledge with those folks. Um, and it's very interesting that you bring this question up because uh, I was having a meeting with my Vistage group on last Friday. And they're like, well, why would you do that? Like, what's the point? And the mission, because legacy is a thing for me, the mission is to end suffering for founders who exit. And so even if there's not financial benefit in it for us, we think it's really important that we eradicate the founders exit paradox.
You mentioned the word eradicate in terms of this problem about, I think, two or three times. And I find this fascinating because there's two approaches to a business. When you find a problem that could be a business, there's two approaches. There's this big problem that nobody solved. I can start a business and make a bunch of money. That could be that frame of reference. And that could be somebody else who's like, there's this big problem that nobody solved, and I want to eradicate this problem from the face of the earth. There's two different mindsets here. So tell me about your approach to the business. I don't get the feel that it's about money here. It's different. It's like a mission.
No. And I actually had a conversation 2 days ago because my lady was like, well, how much money are you track to make this year? I was like, I don't know. And she was like, well, when did you stop tracking? I said a few years ago when I realized money didn't matter. And she was like, I don't know what's going on. I was like, I'm just in a different space. We have enough and we can continue to live the lifestyle that we enjoy living. So the pursuit of more isn't the answer, at least not more money. The pursuit is impact. We talk about your six regularly, and it's like, what are you talking about, man? Is this a military term? No, who are the six people who are going to carry your casket when you pass away? Most people don't have three. You don't have three people that they know would be there to carry their casket when they pass away. And that's a problem. And so it's my desire to live my life in a way where people fight over the honor of carrying my casket. Maybe they switch out. Maybe it's like a water bucket line, right? Where they're just kind of lined up and they're passing the casket along to get to the place. I don't know. It's not for me to figure out, but I want to have an impact where there's that many people who want to participate in that way because it's something I can't do for myself. And so the eradication from the face of the planet, the statistic that 75% of people regret their exit, to me, is an atrocity. And so you see all the vaccine stuff and they're getting rid of these diseases and so on and so forth. To think that some people put their blood, sweat, and tears, risk losing their relationships, ruining their relationship with their kids, all for the sake of serving some group of people in exchange for some compensation, only to be rewarded for all of that by regretting that they transacted, is a problem for me. I think, and it's totally preventable. Like, I could understand if like there was no way that people could get around this, but with proper planning, you can move yourself into a space where you absolutely do something where you exit to instead of exit from, right? Most people exit from their business. They get fed up, they get tired, they get old, and they're like, oh, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of this. Instead of, oh, this is this new thing. This is actually my legacy. And I'm liquidating, I'm transacting in order to get my time, my talent, and my treasure so that I can allocate it against this problem in order to create the impact that I was placed on this planet to do. To me, it's a totally different experience. It's a totally different approach. And it's counterculture because all the people that come in and want to sell a business are going to talk to you about the ability to maximize valuation. For what? If you have your number, then what are you doing?
They probably want to win, whatever that means.
And I love it, right? Because the scoreboard is more money every time. You give somebody, and it's a lazy metric because it's easy to count. It's extremely easy to count. I call it a lazy metric. I also call it a solution, a pre-exit solution. Once you get post-exit, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're not trying to solve the bottom two layers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're trying to solve the top three. And then if you really want to get heady and woo-woo, then you're trying to solve transcendence, which floats above the pyramid. And those are the problems. Those are the things that you want to measure. But how do you measure love and belonging? How do you measure self-actualization? There aren't metrics for it. And so people revert back to, oh, well, my net worth is X, or my company did this much revenue, or I've got this many employees. And all that stuff makes me sick. So when people are going around bragging about stuff, I tell them, and I was just counting it 3 days ago, like I'm 150 days off this year. We're in September. So, okay, great. You made 5 million. I got to decide what I wanted to do in 150 days. To me, that's more valuable because time is a non-renewable resource.
Yeah, money is the laziest metric, and so these other parts of the hierarchy of needs are more important, but people don't really have the skill set of even how to approach them. You mentioned legacy, and so I'm wondering, is that what people are most that they really care about, and then is that what you mostly care about? Because I want Well, I want to hear your thoughts on that word.
Yeah. So I think what I would say I care most about is freedom. And some people call it optionality. It's all about choice, right? So I've got a car and the license plate says I choose. That's what people are pursuing. You don't have to have $100 million in order to have optionality. You have to create a life that allows you to choose what you want to choose. You have to create freedom. And when I say freedom, it's the allocation of the resources, time, talent, treasure, right? If I get to choose how I'm going to do that instead of it already being chosen for me, I'm winning there. What people actually care about when it's all said and done is, did their life matter? And most people think your life matters because of how much money you made. It has very little to do with that because money is just a tool. What you do with the money that you make is the thing that makes all the difference. Again, it's the allocation of that resource. But money is not the only tool, right? Treasure is not the only tool. You've got talent and you've got time. And the time one is not renewable. So inherently, from my perspective, it's the most valuable one. And then talent, sometimes we interchange and say energy. And so your ability to allocate your talent or your energy to some problem, for instance, I sit on the board of a fairly qualified health center, which means that we provide care that is equivalent to the best private care you can get to the people who can't afford insurance. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why my mentor was involved in it and why he cared. And then when I got into the work, I saw how much of a difference you can make. Because, in America, healthcare isn't a right. Like, it is a luxury in most cases, unless you have access to something like United Health Centers. And so our ability to participate in stuff like that, our ability to endow scholarships so students can go to college without student debt because we give them a full ride, or because we can participate on different boards related to the university to help with curriculum and instruction and connection to industry and so on. Like, those things for me make my life matter. And there are people who come up to me. We were at a game in Tennessee, and a football game in Tennessee at the Titan Stadium, and I was walking out of the suite, and a kid walked up to me who I taught in a class that I volunteered to teach at a university over the summer. It was part of a summer camp thing, and he was like, "Did you da 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 da?" I was like, I'm surprised you remembered. But it felt really good that out of all of the people that came through and spoke, he remembered me. And I had some form of impact on it because it was memorable for him. That's the game, man. Cars for me. Like, I was a car kid and now I'm a car guy. The thought that a 10-year-old could walk up and sit in the seat of a car that they only imagine being possible, not because their parents told them no, but because their parents would never buy anything like that, gives them hope. Like, I believe you got to touch it in order to create it or feel it. And um, the thought for me is that dreams should be real. And so I'm doing everything I can to live my life to prove that thesis. And that to me is what makes my life matter.
Jerome, you dropped a few frameworks here. So my question to you is, which one should every founder know before they sell, if you already haven't mentioned it?
I would start with the exit readiness assessment. It is the simplest tool and biggest return on investment. I'm talking about, you spend 7 minutes and you get a clear understanding of where your business is at. We ask you questions that nobody else is going to ask you unless they're trying to position you or proposition you to sell it. You don't have to do anything with us. We give you the report for free. To me, that is the tool that is the industry standard for anybody who's in business, because exit strategy is just a good business practice. You want to know where you're exposed, because if you don't know where you're exposed, then how can you fix it? And I think that is the tool that people should use. And then there's a bunch of other stuff, but none of that matters if you don't know where you're at.
I think it's pretty clear of the unique selling proposition that you guys offer. And maybe it's not all about closing deals and getting sales for specifically for your business. It's making an impact. And I think that's attractive for a lot of people who are looking for help. And since this is the Amazing Marketing Show, could you share some marketing tips based on these frameworks and this style of persuasion that people can then take into their own businesses?
Yeah, I love that question. You know, our whole approach is based on proving that helping people question whether or not you can actually help them, right? We live in a world where advice is everywhere. Everybody's a consultant or a coach. And it's my belief that if I understand your problem better than you do, and I've never talked to you, and I can tell you how you feel about your current situation, and I can tell you what's going to come next, you think I'm either psychic, a mind reader, have some special power, or I really am an expert. My hope is that you think I'm really an expert. And then from there, you believe that we can help you solve the problem because we understand it better than you do, because we spent more time on that. And we just spend all of our time between social media, podcasts, books, white papers, demonstrating our understanding of the problems and letting people know that there are solutions, there are frameworks, there are tools that can help them move through that so that their experience is less painful.
Jerome, I've met some people who do work similar to yours, not exactly, but it's similar within the same field. And I feel like your approach to this problem is at a different level of consciousness than the average approach. So then what separates, you're very welcome, sir. What separates you and your approach from the average business or person who does something similar to what you do?
Yeah, I don't think most people care about the personal planning aspect of exit planning. And so the people that are similar, while they may say, oh, we'll talk about your personal plan, they are very focused on how can I get you more money first? And then what do we do with the money that we got you in order to grow it? So they're solving, and it's funny you said consciousness. They're solving, if we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they're solving the first two level problems: food and shelter and security, basic physiological needs. I believe that the truly apex performers are working on levels 3, 4, 5. And my hope is we can help them get to 6, which is transcendence, right? And most people, because it's difficult to measure, stay away from that. We aren't scared of it. We know that we can do the lower order things, but we want to appeal to that higher order of consciousness. We know that there are people out there who feel like they've been placed on the planet to do something very meaningful, and it wasn't the business that they built. And they're searching for that. And so once they buy their freedom, they need that problem so that they can actually enjoy earning the breath that they get for this extra time while they're free. And I struggle with the people who just think that, oh, I'm free, so I go sit on the beach or I just party. Like, that's not why you're getting free. You're getting free so you can actually achieve the mission that you've been placed here for.
I'm curious about measurement because we're talking about the first two layers, easy to measure and money speaks. But the people who are now open to it, maybe from hearing this podcast or even from before, well, how should they start counting if they're starting to succeed in these other areas that are more important?
When I first got into private equity, and I was hiding behind a logo, right? My face wasn't anywhere on social media. Um, And the posts were very obscure. Like you had to be close in order to understand what was going on. It was awful marketing. And then I got challenged by a group of guys in the cabin and said, hey, for 90 days, you need to show your face on social media every day and just document what's going on. And I'll never forget, I got the first message that said, hey, man, I didn't think anybody like me could do this, but I see what you're doing, and that gives me hope. And I thought about when I was a young engineer and I was working at a company with 17,000 employees. There were 88 executives and there was one Black executive. He was a guy. And I said, hey, man, like my goal is to be an executive here and you give me hope. I remember that exact same conversation. You give me hope that I could be an executive here. And he told me something that was life-changing. It was like, Jerome, don't try to be the best Black executive. Just be the best engineer now and then director and eventually be just the best executive you can be. But the thought of it was a challenge for me because most people have to, again, see it to believe it. And so my desire is to be an example. I talked about Chris being my role model, right? And whether he's rolling on the jiu-jitsu mats or he's rolling through town with the family, whatever it is, he's rolling. And so the opportunity to roll is something that is, it shouldn't be misconstrued as anything less than a privilege.
There's something you said that I remember it hit me, and then now it evades me, so I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but you might be able to help me like put it together. I remember I was at this, speaking of people like representation, point being, I was at a mastermind with you, one of my favorite masterminds I've ever done. We were in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, in that cabin. Shout out to my boy Kofi, by the way. Still talk to him. We have a meeting once every 3 months. But we, you said something about when like who you are, your purpose meets your passion, then you have alignment. Something like that. About for me, what I took that as is when I step into myself and I know who I am. I'm walking at a different level of consciousness. I have a self-acceptance. I love myself, and then I'm trying to improve from there. And I know what I want to do. I have a mission. When those two things align. So before we get off, if you remember what I'm talking about, can you speak to that and help me clarify that thought?
Yeah, I think the thought is very clear, and I think you captured it well. The opportunity for ascension is completely tied to being in purpose and on purpose. And so many people are doing things for motives that have nothing to do with their purpose. And they're willing to do things that are not on purpose in order to achieve that outcome. And when you do that, it takes you to a space and a place where you don't accept yourself because you know that you're not actually living out the morals, values that you think are supposed to be lived out by you. You know you're not your highest and best self.
I'm going to encourage everybody listening to this who's got some sort of feeling like, wow, Jerome is hitting on something that I've consciously or maybe subconsciously only thought about. The best thing you can do is go to exit2excellence.com/era. That's where this exit readiness assessment is. And it's only going to take 5 to 7 minutes. So, and it's free and it's going to give you the results right away. So there's no risk. And so you might as well do it and just see what happens. See if it speaks to you. Jerome, any context to that you want to add?
I just want to emphasize, if you're not aware of what situation you're in, you're probably exposed and taking your largest investment, your largest asset, and putting it at risk unknowingly. Like, I don't think anybody would take 80% of their money, which is what percentage of most people's net worth is tied up in their business, and not do due diligence before investing in. They wouldn't just push it out there. And we're saying, hey, for no fee, no cost, don't have to talk to anybody. We can let you know where you have exposure so that you can decide to do something with it or not. Again, you get to choose. We're just giving you the opportunity to have that review so that you can make an informed decision versus being unconsciously incompetent.
Yeah, isn't it funny how so many of us will go through all these hoops to maybe watch the game on TV without having to subscribe and save the $7 and pick the TV that's $50 off and wait until 8 months from now when it's on sale on Black Friday and go through all this time and energy for minuscule, unimportant things. But when it comes to our lives and what we truly desire and our business, which is so important, we don't spend the time. And that's probably why that statistic exists of 75% of people who exit regretting it for one reason or another. So, I mean, 7 minutes, I think everyone can afford 7 minutes to take this assessment.
Yeah, so let's watch out your social media time for a little bit, and I think you'll get a bigger benefit for sure.
All right, Jerome. Well, I really enjoyed this episode, and anybody who's watching this on YouTube, something's piqued my attention when all of a sudden I start taking notes here. So this was one of those cases, and I wrote down some really cool ideas I'm going to take back for myself. Chris, any final thoughts?
No, I really, really enjoyed this episode.
Dmitri, Chris, thank you so much for having me, guys. This is an honor, and I'm really grateful for being able to share this with you guys and your audience.
All right. Well, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, YouTube, leave us a comment. And by the way, get on that email mailing list because we are sending the summaries of every episode. The notes are there. The links are there. And the links, by the way, are in the description. As you well know at this point, we always have that there. All right. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Peace.